In this video, we're going to cover all the things you need to know about whimsical wireframes. Here's a rough outline of what we are going to cover. There's frames, elements, shortcuts, exporting, and we'll wrap up with a couple examples. And just so you know, at the bottom in the timeline, you'll see that these correspond to different chapters, so you can skip between them very easily. So just to orient you real quickly, we are in wireframe mode inside of a whimsical board. And what that means is that the top two options in the main toolbar are wireframe specific, and also that all the keyboard shortcuts correspond to wireframes. And if you've seen any of the other tutorial videos, you'll know that you can do all four activities inside of one board, and you can change modes easily by going to the top here or hitting W to change modes. We're going to stay in wireframe mode for this tutorial, and we're going to start by talking about frames. There are 6 frames that are available to use in wireframes. Starting over here, you've got window. This is great for websites and desktop apps. You've got 3 different options for mobile, tablet, and then frame is customizable and you can size it however you would like. In terms of creating frames, you can do this over in the toolbar or by hitting F. And then once you open that menu, you have numbers that are keyed to each of the different frame types. So let's hit 2 to create an iPhone frame. Once you have the iPhone frame open, you'll see that you can rename it. Let's name it Home. And if you would ever need to rename it, there's a couple ways to do that. You can click the icon here, you can select the frame and then hit enter, or you can double click into here and rename it there. Some of the other options in the contextual toolbar are status bar at the top, keyboard, and you can also change orientation to landscape. Background color allows you to change the entire background, and the iPhone is resizable height only. So if you want to demonstrate a longer page, you can do that. And that's frames. Next up is elements. Elements are really the heart and soul of wireframes. To add elements to this page, you can go to the very top of the main toolbar, or you can hit E. And when you do that, you're going to get a whole list of the available elements, which are all searchable. So you can do something like button, hit enter, and there you go. You've gotten button to use. The other thing you should notice is that the keyboard shortcut is beside these, and we have intentionally keyed a lot of these to your left hand, and primarily the most frequently used ones. So you can actually access these directly by hitting something like B. And then you don't even need to go through the menu. It's quite fast. So why don't we take a look at all of the elements that are available. First, we'll cover text, which is not necessarily an element, but is something that's used all the time when you're creating wireframes. And here I just wanted to show you that you have these t-shirt sizes from extra small all the way to XL. And you even have a couple secret sizes which are found by just using the keyboard shortcut. And sometimes these can be useful for labeling large sections on the board where you want it to stand out. So you'll notice that none of these are selected, and the way that you do that is Command Option plus or Command Control plus, and then you have a few secret text sizes at the very top end of the range. Buttons and links are also a mainstay of wireframes, and we're going to take a look at some of the options here. You'll notice that they come in small, medium, and large, and they can have different styles. So you've got the fill style, here is the outline style, and then just a text link style. You can change the color of these, and there's actually a wider range of colors if you'd like. And these buttons can also have icons. So these can be added or changed very easily. So let's say delete. We'll do a trash can. The other thing is that icons can go on the left or the right. And you can remove the icon here. And buttons can also have states. So you can do a disabled state. Somewhat related to links and buttons is tabs. So tabs, if you search for them, there's 3 different options, and you can see these here. You've got mobile tabs, which are great for, iPhone, iPad designs, and these are a horizontal orientation with the icon above. And then you've got vertical orientation, and then you've also got a horizontal orientation with the icons beside the text. Now, using these is quite simple, and you can kind of click into it and add another tab. Let's do settings. After you've done that, you can click here and add your icon. And these are resizable, and they're just going to all have an even amount of spacing. The other thing that you can do is you can double click into these to get to the state, and you can change the selected. And when you change the selected state, it will remove the selected state from another one, assuming that you're just going to need one. You can change the orientation of the tabs, and you can also change where the icon is from here. So you can place the icon on the right or on the top, or you can keep it on the left. And that is tabs. Next, we're going to talk about some form elements. You've got checkboxes, radio buttons, text inputs, text areas, and dropdowns. These come in 3 sizes as well, and as you can see, they have a couple different states to them. You can check out the options here and change that very easily. You can also, I'll pull this over here so that we can add another one underneath, like so. The others work about the same. There's a label option, which is removable. You can add that back in there. And in the input fields, you have a couple different options for the state. You notice here that we just have an unselected, there's an error state. This is a focus state, and then also we've turned off the placeholder. And I'll show you how that works. So you have the 4 different states up here, and then you can turn on the placeholder, or you can turn off the placeholder, which will make it so that it has regular text inside of there. The dropdown also has the ability to add some options, which will be visible at all times. So you can go ahead and do that and just hit enter, option 2. So there you go, that's possible for a dropdown. Next, we're going to look at shapes. In flowcharts, we give you access to lots of different shapes. In wireframes, there's just 3. And the reason we did this was that we wanted shapes to be used not for styling, but for more semantic purposes. And so we didn't give you a bunch of options here. There are color options available. As you see, you can expand for the extended color palette, but honestly, everything that you need is roughly in this limited color palette. And just like in flowcharts, you have a couple different styles. You can drop the fill, and you can also add an icon. And what happens when you add an icon is you can use these for images or videos or avatars, and those are key to shortcuts as well. So for instance, V is avatar, and for the other 2, you can search for them. G is image, and so you have quick access to that. Moving down the list, we have different types of switches. So you've got reviews, which aren't really switches, but they kind of fall into this category. It's easy to change the number of reviews that's being shown, and there's 3 different sizes. There's 3 different sizes for most of these elements. Here you have a slider, which you can just grab and change easily. Same thing with the progress bar. You have different color options and sizes, and you have a little handle that makes it easy to change those. Toggles have a few states as well as color options and sizes, so you can turn these off or you can have them disabled. It's up to you. This is a overlay for kind of simulating a modal window, and that can be placed over a frame. Finally, we've got a couple more tables, which are fairly self-explanatory, but if you want to edit, you can press the pencil button icon, and then you're going to get the ability to click into each of these cells, and from there you can add icon or enter text, and you have a couple styling options for that text. These plus buttons will allow you to add columns or rows, and right now we are doing automatic resizing of the columns based on how much text is in there. So if you have a longer text, then it will take up a little bit more space for that column. Here's a tooltip element. Basically, it comes in 3 sizes, and you can also easily spin around where the little triangle is, and you can also control that from here. Lastly, you have an annotation element, which can be used just to mark up or add visible notes. You, of course, can always comment on things, but annotations can be visible at all times. And you've got some options here. You can have numbered annotations, which will go up automatically, or you can instead use this icon option, and you can have a couple different versions of that if you'd like. So you can do something like thumbs up. This is great. And that covers all of the elements in wireframes. We're going to talk now about a few shortcuts that are relevant to wireframes. We'll open this up, and we've got a couple here. I'm going to use this frame as an example. So the first one that we'll cover is grouping. And so let's create a little something here. I'm going to show you something that I failed to mention when we were talking about elements, but we have a lorem ipsum block, which makes it super simple to grab some Latin text for filler. And you can also do this block text. So you can choose between those depending on which you prefer, and you can regenerate those by clicking them again or by hitting enter. So that lets you cycle through those if you would like to. And let's also put a smaller one down here. And what we might want to do is to say, hey, this is a block that would be good to repeat or move together as a group. So we're going to select all of those, and then you see Command G, Control G, and then the button in the context bar. So let's go ahead and click that. Now, these all move in one unit, and there's a couple extra icons here. So you can enter this group by clicking this icon or double clicking inside, and you hit exit to get out of it, and then you can also ungroup this. Okay, so now these are separate shapes. Let's group it, and I want to show you one other thing, is if you have a group or if you have multiple groups, like groups inside of groups, a shortcut that I use all the time in Figma is Command click or Control click on a PC, and this lets you select the object inside of the group directly. So it's a direct selection, and so that can save you some time so you're not sitting there kind of trying to double click through all these groups, and you can just Command click and you can get the object that you're looking for. Okay, I'm gonna talk a little bit about copy and paste because there's a specific behavior in wireframes that saves you a lot of time. So I'm gonna hit X, and that's gonna pull up icon, and then I'm gonna search for a hamburger, just for the menu. So let's say we place this in a particular point, and we're saying, okay, we want this here now too. So what you can do is you can copy. So I just hit Command C, copied it to my clipboard, and you can go over here, click on this frame to select it, and then Command V or Control V to paste, and it will paste in the same exact location in this frame. So it's a good thing to know, and can save you a lot of time if you're wanting them in the exact same location. Another thing that I mentioned in the flowchart tutorial, but can be really helpful, and I use it all the time for wireframes, is once again with icons. Let's say we were going to put a little star by the logo for some reason. And it's a little bit small, and okay, maybe the snapping wasn't quite right. So what we can do, we can zoom in here, and we show the grid if you're in closer than 100%. And I'm going to hit the tilde key. And what the tilde key does is it ignores auto snapping and the grid completely. So it gives you the ability to place this exactly where you want it. So you might want to put it precisely somewhere, and that's how you would do it. You'd hit the tilde key and drag it to wherever you would like. Otherwise, you're going to be constrained by the grid lines. So that's ignore grid. And something else that comes up pretty frequently in wireframes is, let's say that you want to center this. Of course, you could drag and look for that line, the guide, which is helpful, but you might also want to hit a keyboard shortcut for it, which is center horizontally. So you can use Option H, or it would be Alt H on a PC, and voila, a little snap. And that's a good one to commit to memory if you can, and because you kind of find that you'll want to center elements all the time and make sure that they're right where they need to be. And so those are a handful of shortcuts that I think you'll use and find helpful in wireframes. Next, we're going to cover exporting. And we can use some of these for an example. There's a couple options for exporting, and this is going to be up here in export. So export is going to allow you to download images of your work here in a wireframe board, and perhaps you're going to plug it into something like Marvel or InVision to make a clickable prototype. Or maybe you just want to save it out and so you can share it or send it in a message. So a couple options here. Clicking the board is going to give you everything on the board. And so frames will just give you these individual frames as separate images, as opposed to this one large image. Size, fairly explanatory, 1x, 2x for Retina. And there's another option here, which is only available when you have selected something, and this is going to be selection only. So if you just want this frame, or whatever you have selected, you can toggle selection only. And then content only is going to make the difference between whether you see the gray frame or not in your download. So content only is only going to give you this interior part, and you won't see the device frame at all. So this is that's a quick overview of exporting in wireframes. Typically, we tend to see people wanting to export frames, and that's why we default to that. And at the 2x size is nice, and then it's up to you whether you want to go selection only and content only. And then click download, and you'll have it there. To wrap things up for wireframes, I thought I would show you a few wireframes that are fully created, and so you could kind of see what they look like here and some of the objects and elements that I'm using. First, we'll start out with this. This is the ESPN app, and one of the things here is I'm using the gray background because they kind of have these white sections on top. And so it kind of felt like, okay, it's a little bit easier if these white sections sit on top of the gray itself. In general, my philosophy on wireframing is that you can use color sparingly. So most things are going to be grayscale. And then where you want to draw attention for actions or links, that type of thing, that's where color is especially helpful. The other time that color can be helpful is for semantic things like a alert message that tells you you're going to delete something, or a caution message might be orange, and those are great times to bring in color as well. But besides that, I like to reserve the color for just action elements or things that that need to bring attention like that. So this is an example of horizontal tabs with the icon on top. And in this case, I'm just using text that is colored. You could, of course, I hit N for link, and you could do it this way. So that's totally like an option. And right here, this is a group, but inside the group, you've got a circle shape, and it's using a plus icon. So you'll see, and that's how that's put together. Let's look at this tablet example. This is the Dropbox app. So again, got some tabs down here. You've got some rows. Once again, a rectangle object with a icon. So if you want something like that, you can search for PDF, and that's what's there. You got an input field and not much else other than that. These are just standalone icons. You could do that with a tab as well if you want. And finally, here is the web version of Yelp. So we can zoom in here, and yeah, there's a little bit more going on here, but nothing that you haven't seen before. We're using some buttons here. This is a little different. This is a input field, and in order to give the effect that we wanted, we're just placing a button on top of it. Now, it might be worth mentioning there's some arrange layer options here. And so the bracket key will send backwards. So if you kind of place this and you're like, oh, I actually want that above, you can hit that bracket key. Right bracket is going to bring it up, and that's no problem there. Something I didn't mention before is that we do a thing in Whimsical called auto grouping, which essentially means, let's just put some text down here. This is a test, and I'm going to bring a rectangle. And now if I place this rectangle on top of that text, the text actually pops to the top. And the assumption here that we've made is that the smaller objects are almost always, you're going to want them on top of the larger objects behind them. And then, so this is called auto grouping. And one of the other things that happens is when you move the larger object that has auto grouped to the small object, we move everything. So just something to be aware of. Hopefully it saves you more time and is a good kind of enhancement to your workflow, but that's auto grouping. And besides that, really there's a lot of text, a few links, and a few rectangles. It's surprising how simple that wireframes can really be. The last example I'm going to give you is more of a wire flow, and this is a lightweight way to kind of combine wireframes and flowcharts. So here we have a window frame, and we are just doing this sign-up flow. And so we've got a couple of these connectors that have custom endpoints, and they're just showing you this flow through a sign-up process, or in this case, a sign-in process. And so that's another example that might give you a little bit of an idea of what you can create with wireframes. And that wraps up our tutorial here. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you can go and create awesome wireframes for yourself.